Howdy y'all, it is Cody from the Keepers of Nerdom. How you doing? I thought today would be a great day to talk about one of the weirder parts of reviewing on Warhammer stuff. The worst units. The things that just don't add up in our codex, index, whatever you want to call it right now. And for today we're talking about Necrons. I'm getting closer and closer to where I can really do an evaluation of Tau, but I'm not quite there yet. Because I just don't understand them all yet, and I want to at least try to get a game of playing them in some fashion at least. So I have a grasp on some use. But the worst Necron units in the game, and I was trying to do a top 5, and I realized I just can't quite, because there's some that just don't quite fit into that. And so I believe it's a top 7 worst. And some of this has an order, but as you'll see when I get down to the bottom worst, it's... you could mix and match really easily, right? Because they're all in a weird spot. So let's go through these, and we'll have a few honorable mentions once we get towards the end of it. There's quite a few pieces to this puzzle, that's for sure. So our number 7, so the least worst of the worst, in my thoughts and opinion, is this, the Convergence of Dominion. The reason it's number 7, and that's just it, these are, again, they could be interchanged. You could probably make a case that this is the worst, because nobody's going to take it. Granted, right? So let's really just call them the bottom 7, that they're all just kind of there for other reasons. But it's one of those that the Convergence of Dominion only became good in 9th at the very end, like the last 6 months. And even then, I don't know that it was taking a whole lot. So it's way too expensive. It's 255 points. Kind of ridiculous, kind of crazy. The ability it has is good, but it's just not worth 255 points. That's all I'll say. Like, it heals and helps you reroll like the healing rolls for your reanimation protocols, which is nice. Very, very nice. Very good. But not for 255. The weapon isn't good enough on it to justify the cost when it was down at what, like 80 for all 3 of them in 9th edition at the very end? Kind of crazy. And then it was actually viable. Yeah, so that's the first one. I think the next one on our list that I would like to point out is the Obelisk. What's funny about the Obelisk, and it's hard to really quantify, is that the Obelisk has been bad for a really long time. And in this edition, it's bad again. It's just, basically, how do you describe the Obelisk? It's bad. That's it. That's your solution. Obelisk is bizarre because Obelisk it's 325 points. The weapons on it are Tesla, so there's no AP at all, and AP's hard to come by right now as far as a lot of weaponry. So you're going to put down a big model, you want it to have some AP, because it should. Just ridiculous, right? 255 for this junk thing that kind of targets aircraft, or fly? I think it's aircraft. But just, I mean, it can target other stuff too, but it's just not that good. It's just not. So, very, very useless, and I think it's not like definitely the bottom of the barrel, in part just because nobody wanted to use it anyway. That's the funny thing. So it probably really is the bottom of the barrel that you would never, ever take it. Whereas some of these other things you can make a case for, oh, it actually could be useful. Not the Obelisk. You know, it's on that bottom tier for sure. So our next character or model or unit, whatever you want to call it for this, is the Plasmancer, right? No, Psychomancer, because Plasmancer actually has quite a bit of use now, which is interesting because previous edition it wasn't very good, but now Psychomancer was bad previous edition, and it's still bad. It makes units have to take battle shock tests within 18 inches, and then it's like within 9 they have -1 to their leadership. 50 points. Yeah, you know, it could be useful, right? In those gameplay things, it could actually be useful because it could get something technically off of an objective because they're battle shocked. But that doesn't guarantee that it actually passes, fails the battle shock test. So I don't know what you do with that. What do you do with that? Not something worth really considering at all. Okay, so our next one, and I actually had it when I was first making the top or the bottom 5. It was like my number 1, and I realized there was things way worse than that. But yeah, it all got adjusted, and I realized, these bottom, you can't just make a numbered list because they're just not in a good spot, any of them. Trazyn the Infinite, okay, 75 points. He does have sticky objectives. That's his one good thing, and that is good. That is really good. The problem is he doesn't have a good weapon. It's just a melee weapon, and it's not very good. And his surrogate hosts to jump into other host bodies, meaning you have to destroy one of your other characters that might be actually doing something as well, and place him over there just to keep him alive for, I guess, the sticky objective. It's just not a good combination. The sticky objectives is one saving grace, and I'm guessing that's what's costing him the way it is. But it's just not worth it. Not worth it, in my opinion. He's just stinky, very stinky. All right, so next one, Doomsife. Doomsife is rough. 225 points. We were down to 165. Obviously, toughness went up. Toughness 9. Or did it? No, I don't think it did. I don't remember. But he lost one of his defensive things. He still doesn't have an invuln save or quantum shielding. And you have to wait till turn 2 to play him. It's just all bad all around. His weapons did get some little extra bonuses, but overall just not a good spot. And it saddens me because I was hoping, Doomscythe might actually, because it was on the edge of playable last thing, where it was actually almost kind of decent enough to play because the points drops. But even then, there was better stuff to play. And now it's even worse. It really is, because the big stuff in the game still has high enough AP to deal with it, right? Next one right there is same thing. Along with it is actually the Night Scythe, and Night Scythe is crazy because it's 145 points, only 20 points less than what Doomscythe was in 9th edition. And my understanding of it is you can't deploy till turn 2, and you wouldn't be able to deploy the units in it until turn 3. So it's just too long of a wait for it to be viable. Unless it gets shot down on turn 2, then the things inside of it could spawn out, but they're going to take damage. So just bad. It's sad because it's like they just don't know what to do with aircraft right now, and right now it seems like the solution is just make them all terrible so that way we don't have to deal with them as a company, which I guess I kind of get, but then it's also like, again, here's a unit that exists in our codex or index, and we don't use them because they're terrible. They're just bad. All right, so some honorable mentions. I have 4 of them, and definitely they were on that edge of questionable. One, I think 2 of the 4 I think are higher tier than these others, but I think they have some serious issues that need to get addressed soon. And the Obelisk, side note, Obelisk, no invuln save. Also, big, crazy expensive thing, no invuln save. It's going to get knocked off the table anyway. Terrible. So let's see. First one, probably the lowest of the honorable mentions as far as still usable, is the Monolith. It's just really expensive at 385 points. That's the problem. It went up in crazy amounts of points from where it was. Lost range. Still doesn't have an invuln save or a feel no pain. It's going to get hit off the board pretty easily. And that frustrates me because when you make me go down in range and then you increase my cost because my toughness went up, but you still don't give me an invuln save or a feel no pain or anything, I had it get destroyed on turn 2 before it ever got to take a shot. Was it my mistake? Yeah, part of it was. I should have had it in, deep strike, strategic reserve stuff, reserves, whatever you want to call it for that. But man, that's just silly that one, and it got destroyed by one other unit. Granted, it's a really expensive unit, but that's silly whenever you have a vehicle that can just get absolutely wrecked and there's nothing you can do to stop it. Just stupid. So anyway, that's a thing. Yeah, Monolith just really saddens me because I think it's still playable because it still has awesome shenanigans of being able to teleport stuff back to it, so that way they can get out of close combat without having counted as a retreat or something like that, right? Still good in that way, but it's just too expensive and no invuln save. Things that need to get addressed. Next thing that I think is still decent is the Ophidian Destroyers. I just got a hold of them with the boarding patrol box. The problem with Ophidian Destroyers is it's 220 for 6, which is expensive, but it's because the Scorpec Destroyer, or the plasma sights are built into that cost. But they do have 5 attacks, which is good. They don't have the extra little claw things. They just have 5 attacks at their hyperphase weapons now, and those are good, decent, right? They're good. It's just these things are squishy. They're toughness 5 from toughness 4, I believe, but in melee, unless you get the charge off first, and as long as they're on first strike against you, then they're going to do some damage, but it's just getting them to that target. They're down to 9-inch movement and memory serves, and I think they're in a better spot than the real sad ones that really frustrates me, because I got the Recruit Edition box, and then I got the Command Edition box. Yeah, it was Recruit, Elite, and then Command Edition. Got the Command Edition, so I've got 6 painted up. This is our next one for Autumn Legends, Scorpec Destroyers. 220 for 6, 6 of them for 220 points, and they probably could be on my bottom tier list because of our melee units. They're down to 7-inch movement. They're super expensive because the plasma sights are built in there. They just don't do well. They don't. They have good weapons for the most part, but they're not tough enough, fast enough to really warrant that cost. So the Ophidian Destroyer is the only thing that saves them a little bit from that other side, is just their speed is a little bit higher, so they can actually maybe get to a target. And memory serves, the Scorpion Destroyers lost that -1 to wound in melee, I believe it was. Whirling Bodies or something like that. I'm trying to remember on that one. Anyway, just rough there. The last one is Triarch Praetorians, 270 for 10 of them, just really expensive. It's not that they have bad weapons by any means, it's just they don't have a clearly defined role, and they just feel like they still kind of exist, and now they don't even get to interact directly with like Silent King. And so it's just kind of a weird scenario to be in. But let's get back to my list of the worst units for the Necrons at this point. And if I was still numbering it, I had this down at like the #1 worst unit, right? The bottom tier of the bottom tier. But I realized Obelisk clearly is worse. Convergence of Dominion is worse. But this one just, for me, it feels like the worst because it feels so, I guess I feel so cheated. Because it's such an expensive model. It's so expensive to own, and yet, if you have it, especially because it was decent, like pretty good, right, in 9th edition, and I get that Games Workshop does this in part sometimes just to make you go, hey, buy the other stuff. It's a good strategy. It's frustrating, though. Very frustrating. But really, it's Silent King is one of those that really frustrates me the most. Okay, again, I don't know that it really is the worst, because it actually has playability. But where it was in 9th edition versus where it is now is very sad. Very, very sad. So Silent King is 470 points. It was 400 in 9th edition, and 400 felt expensive. Not that it wasn't worth it, but it felt dangerously expensive because you spent a lot in there, and if he got knocked down, you felt it, right? So he's 70 points more than where he was, and his memory serves, his range has gone down. Yeah, on the Triarchal Menhirs, which really stinks, right? Their damage is still the same, but their range went down pretty significantly. He lost a lot of abilities, like his fights first is gone. Some of his stuff that was just always on, and his +1s to movement. And what we got in place of it is he can go, you're not battle shocked anymore, and also I can choose one of these 3 each turn and use it. And the 3 options, 2 of the 3 are really good. The bottom one with you can ignore modifiers to rolls other than saving throws, so you can't actually change the one thing that would actually make it really useful. That one's not that great, but the other 2, the first one is reroll hits and wounds of 1s for people, I think it's within 6 inches around him. Cool, yeah, that's really good. And the other one is reroll charge rolls within that of units that are within 6 of him. Again, really good, but it's within 6, right? It's limited. So I find that Silent King, I just don't understand his point cost with the range reduction and the loss of abilities. He just doesn't warrant that cost. Yeah. Just frustrating. Granted, the Triarchal Mineers can come back from the dead because of reanimation protocols, how they function now, but it's not going to take a whole lot of serious weapon platforms to make him go away now. At least he has an invuln save, And so that's, for me, he's, on my lowest tier of the thing. In part because I own one, but also because he was so good in 9th, and then in 10th he went to complete and utter trash. Obelisk has been bad for a long time. Convergence of Dominion got decent at the very end, right? The last patch of 9th edition, last update. Okay, so it's more useful then. That's good. But it's not where it needs to be. And Silent King, I'm hoping and praying that he gets some adjustment in the near future. We had our points cost adjustment, and they didn't do anything. They didn't touch him. And I think they're waiting more so to just see viability, but I don't understand what they're point costing at all with Silent King, because he is not where he used to be in 9th edition, and yet he's more points. Not worth it. Now, that being said, being able to reroll hits and wounds of 1s on firing within the 6-inch aura around him, that is really cool and really useful. Because he essentially is acting like a commander without them having a commander necessarily. Plus, they could have their commander and get their ballistic skill up from a 3 down to a 2 for a lot of them. And then you can reroll those 1s. You're going to hit everything, right? It's going to be nasty, but it's just a lot of points to invest in that, and he can get hit off the table pretty easily because of how big he is and towering, and just how they've not really fixed that mechanic entirely yet, and depending on the terrain you have. So let me know down in the comments below what's your lowest rated Necrons units for you. I think these are some good ones that really hit home, and I think the honorable mentions are just just slightly out of that reach. And I would say Ophidian and Monolith are they're on that edge that I go, something needs to be adjusted to make them back to where they really are functionally playable and useful and have a role. And the other 2 are really, really not great. So, and again, some of this comes down to also there's other units in our codex or index right now that are just better than them, do the same job but better. Lichguard just makes everything else that does melee look so pathetic, because Lichguard literally have 2 builds now that are both better than any other melee thing in the game. It just does, right? And then they can also protect a character who can then help them to be even more ridiculous. Interesting stuff. So let me know down in the comments below. What do you think? What is the worst Necron unit so far in our index? What do you hope to see gets fixed, repaired? I think there's several things that just need to get adjusted a little bit, so that way everything is viable and in a good spot, so we can have options, because more options is more fun. And right now I think overall Necrons are in a great spot as far as options overall. But again, there's some things that they're lacking, and they will have to figure out. But I've been Cody from the Keepers of Nerddom. Take care, y'all, and have a great day. Bye.